Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2025, week 44. That is October 27th through November 2nd. And we are going to continue working on this hitch. So I finally got to the metal store. I got a big old chunk of 1/4 inch. And the plan is I'm going to plasma cut 4 3/8 inch holes in the 1/4 inch plate, so those 4 bolt holes will bolt into the bumper itself. I will then also cut out a hole for a 2-inch hitch receiver to go through the middle, and that hitch receiver will weld to that plate as well as weld to the bar itself, so it should have plenty of strength, I think. And yeah, we're just gonna keep on keeping on with this. I don't think there's too much to say. I just laid out the plan, and now we're just gonna execute it. So one thing is the bumper is not 100% vertical, like it's not perfectly straight up and down. So I'm going to attempt to heat it up with the torch and bend it. But yeah, this 1/4 inch, even though I get it really hot, it does not want to bend. I would probably have to end up like taking the cutoff wheel, notching the steel, then bend it, then re-weld it. I didn't want to do that. I figured it would probably be easier just to build a couple of spacers when I bolt this in. So yeah, I initially started using this brazing torch tip, and it did absolutely nothing. It was an absolute waste of time and gas. So I will switch it over here in a second to the cutting torch so that I can actually get this nice and red hot. The problem is you know, it gets red hot, but then it just cools right down really quickly. So I wasn't really able to bend it at all. You know, ideally I would have like a 10-ton press brake or something like that would allow me to bend, but I don't have that. So I tried doing it with what I had. Didn't work. You know, we'll just kind of make a new plan, build some spacers, and carry on. Right, so we're going to use some magnets here and just kind of stick the receiver hitch through that big giant hole in the plate that I built. And looking at this now, I just realized with the two magnets on either side of that big shaft, it, well, you can figure out what it is. Oh, I have the sense of humor of a 5-year-old and I love it. Yeah, I guess I'm technically playing and gripping the shaft right now. Anyways, just trying to, figure out where center is on this, and from there I can drill the holes and kind of make that all work. So I got this all where I want it. So I'm going to use a center punch, and then do a little pilot hole, and then we'll open that up to the 3/8, and we will get that bolted down. So I decided what I should do here is I don't really want to have to access a nut on the back side, and for when I take the hitch off, it'll be kind of a pain in the ass. So what I'm doing is I'm putting some riv nuts in there. So these are inserts. You put them in, you squeeze the handles, and then the tool expands the base of the insert against the bumper in this case, and then you can just thread your nut in there. Super nice. That way you don't have to access the back side of it in order to tighten the fastener. But what I did learn is, since both the nutsert and the bolt I'm using are stainless steel, I absolutely 100% need to use some copper coat or some anti-seize on there. Otherwise, there's a good chance that the bolt is going to gall and then just lock up solid. I had that happen in the the passenger side fender well when I was mounting fuel lines, and I still haven't dealt with that, but I'm going to have to. So yeah, I learned anti-seize on the bolts is required. Alright, so I decided to be a little bit smart about this. I know that the bumper cover is fairly flush up against the bottom of the bumper, but I was like, you know what? I better get it on there, even just loosely in place for now, just to make sure it is going to clear. And then it'll also help me figure out how far out I want the end of the receiver hitch, or receiver, I guess. The hitch would be the part that goes into the receiver. So yeah, so this will help me set the depth, because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this receiver down. I'm going to notch the end so it goes on the tube, and then I will weld weld it to the plate, weld it to the tube. So that way, all I gotta do is pull out the 4 bolts on the bumper, the 4 bolts on either side of that big bar, and then the whole hitch will drop down and out of the car. And when I'm not doing a drag and drive and not towing a trailer, I can just pull the hitch right off the car. with everything tacked into place here, I'm going to pull the hitch off of the car so you can see the whole thing is just going to drop out. It'll actually be pretty easy and pretty nice. And it's just going to be way easier to weld this on the floor. I can get a good angle, I can get a good position, and it'll just make the weld in theory be a little bit better than if I was trying to weld it on the car and doing it vertically and overhead and just take it off, make it easy. Why not? Although what I should have done is I should have broken the tacks where it mounts to the tube, fully welded the tube, and then come back and welded the plate, only because I didn't have great access in order to weld the top of the tube. It was very tight in there. I got it done, but it could have been better. All right, so now we are getting into something else. We're going to relocate the wiper motor into the fender well. I think I already talked about that when I was filling in the metal on the firewall. So I 3D scanned the wiper motor. I did some CAD drawings, and I built out a mount that I think is going to work pretty well. So we're just going to plasma cut that, and then we are going to start putting it onto the wiper motor, bolt the wiper motor into the fender well, and kind of start figuring a few things out. I absolutely love the 3D scanner and then the plasma cutter because all of these bolt holes lined up perfectly. I don't think I could have done this on my own better. So for me, not being super great fabricator, the use of the 3D scanner and the plasma cutter is just, it makes me look like a good fabricator that when I'm not. I'm just so happy that, I have the luxury of having these tools to make my life a little bit easier and quicker. Otherwise, I would have done this manually if I had to, but it would have taken me probably all day to make versus, half an hour scanning it, probably 45 minutes designing it in CAD, and then like a minute to cut out. So yeah, I think this came out really nicely, and I hope it's going to work. So the plan is I'm going to mount this just right off of this fender material. I'm going to cut it flat. It'll be plenty strong, especially when I bolt this hunk of steel to it. I got a lot of adjustability in here. I can move it forward, I can move it back, in and out. Like it's in a good place. I previously checked with the fender on, and there's tons of room. I'm not, I got no concerns of that. One thing I am going to have to do is I'm going to have to build a windshield washer reservoir in here, and I don't know if I'm going to put that in the fender well because I'll want access to it fairly regularly, but I can figure something out for that probably. Maybe I'll put it on one of the front plates if it's removable. I don't know yet. Haven't decided. I don't need that right this second. I can do that later. See, a lot of this is just like, clamp it on and then like eyeball where that arm is and the geometry to get to the existing arm that's in the wiper motor. So I'm kind of moving it around and making it so it's going to be what I think is reasonably good. So at this point in time, I was looking at this and I was very indecisive. My original plan was to buy an entire new wiper arm set because I didn't want to cut this one in half without really having a backup. But a replacement set was going to cost me in the ballpark of like $100, and I was like, what, screw it. Let's just cut it. Like if I screw this up beyond repair, then I'll go and buy the new one. But there's no point in just waiting and not moving forward. At some point in time, I was going to have to cut that. So I might as well just do it and see if I can make it work. And, right now it's not great. I'm going to need to do some more trimming on the inside and angle the wiper motor a little bit. Right now, the arm is just going and hitting the bottom of the cowl. So what I'm going to do is take this all apart. I'm going to modify that bracket, bend it a little bit so that the arm is more on an upward angle and going into the cowl. All right, after a bunch of tweaking and, drilling the holes in, we got this mounted. So I want to just check and see if this is going to work at all and how it's going to work. So I'm just plugging the wiper motor directly to the battery, no fuse. This is a generally bad idea, but for the short amount of time it's going to be running it, I don't think this is a big deal at all. Yeah, you can see it's spinning, it's doing its thing. I don't have it attached to the actual wiper arm yet, so there's a bit of work to do there. But it moves, it rotates. Yeah, it's hitting on some stuff, so I've got a bunch of finessing to do in that in the fender area. But yeah, I mean, this is starting to look good. In order to actually test this, I'm just going to take a chunk of straight tube. I'm going to tape it in between the C channel on the arm. The arm is C channel. I cut it in half. So I'm just going to tape it on both sides and then see if it works. I hope that it does. But this is just a good, quick way to see, hey, is this even viable? Have I not completely and totally fucked everything up? So yeah. So after a pile more massaging, we did in fact get this working. Now I still need to do some more clearancing. I need to make a proper arm to go from the old one to the new one, because it's hitting inside and it's hitting in places, and I need to, you know, bend it and make it better. But yeah, if you look on my Instagram, there's a reel of this working. There's a YouTube short. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that is all the time that we have for this week. So as always, if you've stuck around this long, I would like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.